session. And the meeting is being recorded. And during the question and answer session, please raise your hand and we will call on you. And if you have any difficulty with the program, or if you have any questions, you can email me directly, morgan@thestudioarchitecture.com. And in order to find the raise your hand button is under the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. And now Jeff is going to talk about the facilities master plan.
Actually, I think this was my slide still, Morgan. I'll jump in here. So what is a facilities master plan? Really what we're trying to do is develop a roadmap for the town to follow for planning for the future of the town facilities. And really we're doing this because we want to make sure we can meet the mission of serving our residents, guests, and employees while being good stewards of the public resources that are given to us and our natural setting. So really just trying to put it out there to start planning and figuring out what we're going to do as some of these buildings reach the end of life. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So some of the goals of the development of this facilities master plan, top on our list is safety. And we're going to talk a lot tonight about police services and how their services are delivered to the community and how we think that might need to change. Service, we want to make sure we can meet the changing needs of the community as well as our staff. A lot of things have changed in the work environment over the last couple of years, and we're still studying that and talking about that. It's been very interesting. So, and also as we move forward, we want to make sure we have a quality product. So as we talk about the future, as we talk about what we want to improve to help deliver our services, we want to make sure it's a quality product. And again, stewardship. We want to make sure we're responsible with the use of the money that's provided to us from the community. And next off, we'll now turn it over to Jeff, and he'll talk a little bit about where we're at in the process, and he's got some more. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, John. So after we did a thorough and in-depth analysis of the town's facilities and discussed some of the key findings with town staff and leadership, we're really excited to be here tonight to gather feedback from town residents and the public before we finalize the facilities master plan. Next slide. So during our analysis, we surveyed about 20 of the town's primary facilities, and we're currently in the process of outlining our recommended facilities improvements. As part of that process, we plan to classify each of the town's assets into a 3-tier system. The first is a low priority ranking, which applies to facilities that are in relatively good shape and aren't in immediate need of upgrading. Second category is the medium priority ranking, which indicates the need for partial or targeted upgrades to the building within 5 years. And then the highest priority ranking will be applied to facilities requiring immediate action to address building code, life safety issues, aging electrical and mechanical systems that have reached or will soon reach the end of their useful lives. Next. During our analysis, we identified a number of key findings. First, Town Hall has served the community well. However, it's well past its useful life and no longer makes sense for the town to invest in its aging building. Second, police services are negatively impacted by its current downtown location. The spaces it uses in Town Hall are insufficient to meet its needs, while the current downtown location is unsafe and getting more so as visitor traffic downtown increases year after year. Third, a number of facilities are also facing major repairs in the future. And finally, the town will need to take a very flexible approach to future facility needs since land is so scarce in town. Next. Our work included the review of some highlights from the town's 2021 community survey. It was interesting that community design was identified as an opportunity for improvement within the town. And also residents showed a preference for increasing or maintaining town services. And not unexpectedly, there was significant community support for public services. You'll see shortly why this is important to highlight. Next. On these graphs, we've mapped the town's responses to the community survey since 2015. On the right, you'll see numbers in bold, and then in the orange text, how the town's responses ranked relative to the national average. Here you can see that both traffic flow and ease of parking ranked lower than the national average. Clearly, easy access to town facilities is important for us to consider since traffic flow and ease of parking scored so low in the survey. Next. Here you can also see that both the ease of car and bike travel in town scored lower than the national average, whereas the ease of walking scored much higher and closer to the national average. Next. As you might imagine, Town Hall will have the highest priority ranking due primarily to the following issues: the building's old age, its inflexible structural system that makes it nearly impossible to modernize, its inefficient use of space, its overcrowding, and last but not least, its significant public parking problem. Another significant issue with Town Hall is that it serves multiple very intense and sometimes conflicting uses. It not only serves as a visitor destination, but as a local destination for paying bills, a library, and even a police station. Next. After our discussion with police leadership during this process, it's clear that the police department's current location in the downtown core endangers both officers and the public. Furthermore, it occupies a scant 7,000 square feet in the building, which is about half of what the police services actually need to satisfy their highly specialized space, office, meeting, and storage needs. They even lack sufficient secure parking for their specialized vehicles. You can understand why we believe the highest priority is to move police services out of Town Hall. We've discussed this possibility with police services leaders, and they agree that a new location outside the downtown core is a high priority. At this point, I'd like to bring in Chief Kufeld, who can comment on the police department's current challenges and future needs. Chief?
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being with us this evening. Just to give you a few points in reference to the police department facility. So we have 37 employees total that work for the police department. That's sworn in civilian employees. And then we have approximately 21 volunteers that work with us, and we see most of them on a daily basis. Our facility, as Jeff had mentioned, is pretty small. The patrol room is currently we have 16 officers that work out of the patrol room. That's where they do their reports. They'll process evidence and conduct some interviews. It's very small. It's very loud in there, and we're trying to cram as many computers in as we can. So we have some workstations. We have made it work, but it's just not practical at this time. And as our populations may increase or activity may increase, visitation even, we're going to need to look at being able to expand those services and those rooms to house more officers. I kind of created a list here just to give you an idea. Our interview rooms, we have one interview room. It's very small. It's not adequate enough to house victims, witnesses of crimes, and certainly to conduct proper interviews of suspects. Lack of security for our patrol room or our police cars has been a real concern of mine for a lot of years. In the past, in my time here, I've seen lug nuts on our patrol cars loosened. We've had our vehicles keyed. We've had windows broken, and different other foreign objects we've found on our windshields and hoods. And in reality, that is just a poor situation. In most police departments that you see in the up and down the front range, they will have a secured parking area where it's either fenced or it's indoors. The restroom in the back is shared by multiple persons, including persons that are held in custody and the officers. The officers' lockers are in the same hallway as the holding cells, just not a good situation. The break room is approximately 10 feet from the booking area. Anytime we brought somebody that's under arrest or somebody we're suspecting of a crime into the back door of the police department, it creates a safety issue for us. We always worry with citizens utilizing that same sidewalk, walking back and forth, or us having a problem with somebody trying to escape or get violent with officers and that sort of thing. We really need a secured area, a sally port of sort. Our evidence room is also a concern for me. At current time, it's at capacity. We really need a larger ventilated evidence room. There is some slight ventilation in the current evidence room, but it's not adequate enough. And many times you'll get odors coming into the rest of the police facility for items, drug items or what have you, that's in the evidence room. Not an ideal situation. Our dispatch center, we currently have 9 dispatchers, 1 supervisor. We really need to build that out to house 12 dispatchers and possibly 5 workstations. Currently, we have 4 workstations up there. Let's see, I spoke about the police officers. In reality, I've been here 33 years, going on 34. We've been in the same building for a long time. It is failing, and it's an old school, and it's time that we move to a better facility that is easier to get our officers out in emergency situations and that sort of thing. We have a lot of traffic that is back and forth behind the police facility. It's frightening at times when we're trying to get out on an emergency call and we can't because the parking lot is full and the streets are blocked out. So we thank everybody for the efforts they're putting into this. It means a lot to us. I think it's going to increase our ability to provide the best service we possibly can to our citizens and visitors, and I look forward to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So from everything you're hearing this evening, it's clear the town desperately needs a new police services facility in a new location and outside the downtown core. So the next question is, should other town services like utility billing or the town clerk remain downtown, or should they relocate as well? Next slide. I imagine it's no surprise when we say that land is scarce in town. So the town will need to be opportunistic. The facilities master plan will help decision makers evaluate options as they come up in the future. And as you'll see later in this presentation, moving police services out of the town hall building is a key to any of the future plans. At this point, I'll stop and turn the presentation over to Carol Adams with Studio Terra, who will walk you through some of the preliminary options we're considering. Carol?
Thanks, Jeff. We're going to talk about 3 very conceptual options tonight. They all have pros and cons. The master plan will likely bring forward versions of all 3 of these options just to be as flexible as possible, as Jeff mentioned. The similarities between all 3 options are that they will include a relocated police station that is larger than their existing facility. Every option will require a new town hall structure or structures, meaning that it's been determined that the existing building is not suitable for renovation. And regardless of where those other town hall services end up, all of the options will include enhanced public restroom facilities at Bond Park. And the differences really are the location of town hall services. Next slide, Morgan, thanks. When you get into the questionnaire later after this meeting, we'll be asking you what you think are the most important considerations for us to be thinking about as we work on the master plan. And we're not going to get into this level of detail here, but as you listen to these options, you'll have a chance to give us some pretty detailed feedback. Next slide, please. So these diagrams are very conceptual. We're not talking about any specific sites in town at this point, But generally what they're showing is existing facilities in downtown in that beige kind of circle area, and then some new location outside of downtown. In option one, this is where police services would move outside of downtown, but town hall would remain downtown. Town hall services would remain downtown and be rebuilt into a new structure. Next slide, please. So some of the elements of this option are new police services building would be phase one. Town hall is rebuilt downtown, and the town services that are traditionally there now would remain downtown. And what that would mean is that redevelopment into new uses that would serve the community would not be available at the town hall site. And the parking, as we all know, is tricky. And so the parking considerations in this option are critical. Next slide. The second option looks at moving all of these services out of downtown into a new location and co-locating them to create more of a civic campus. And depending on the land assemblage that's possible, additional town amenities or services could be co-located there. Next slide. So again, in all these scenarios, the new police services building would be the first phase. Town hall would be relocated outside of downtown in this campus scenario near police, and that would render the town hall site available for redevelopment for other community uses that would be identified through some other process. And there would be limited town government presence right in the downtown. Next slide. And the third option is really a hybrid of those two, where police services again moves and some portions of the town hall services would move to that same location, preferably outside of downtown. Next slide. So again, police services is phase one. That would render the town hall site partially available for some redevelopment, less robust than the second option. And again, parking is a consideration in all of these options and would need to be carefully considered. In this scenario, some town government presence remains downtown. Next slide. I'll turn it over to Kevin to talk about financing and funding.
Thank you, Carol. As you can imagine, any of these scenarios will require a fair amount of investment by the town. There are a number of ways that the town could consider doing this, through bonds, certificates of participation, which are similar to bonds but don't have the voting requirements. There are also other ways that transfer some of the risk to third parties, where there's energy performance contracts, or energy or infrastructure as a service. One of the things that we did in preparing all of this, alongside looking at the status of current facilities, we also looked at the status of current funding of facilities. John and his team have really made a fairly meager budget stretch pretty far in terms of keeping facilities up to date and making sure that they're operational. The big challenge has been finding a way to have the capital investment required for a new facility. John has put those in the CIP, the capital improvement plan for the town, but right now they are not funded. They're considered in what's called out years, so more than 5 years down the road. In terms of funding streams, we've seen other communities on the Front Range, redevelop public safety centers, police headquarters, those sorts of things. Sometimes there's grants available from state or federal sources. In this case, if depending on what happens in the town hall area, there could be some redevelopment potential to, where the town could recoup some investment by selling or redeveloping the town hall site in some way. Also, it's important to note that whatever happens with the three scenarios, sales tax are likely to play a major role, given the unique kind of fiscal structure of Colorado. and of course the economic considerations of Estes Park, sales tax are really a driving force in terms of operational and capital budgets. So the town needs to kind of take that into consideration in looking for revenue streams when there are years where sales tax receipts are high, potentially setting some of that aside. There's a lot of different options, but it's hard to imagine a facility funding plan that does not include sales tax in some way, shape, or form. And we've worked closely with Dwayne and John and the team at the town to understand what this might entail, and that'll be a part of the master plan. Next slide, please, Morgan. So kind of in sum, one of the key findings is that Town Hall has seen a lot of different uses over the years. The facility is in a state where it does not make a lot of financial or economic sense to invest in renovating it. So that presents the town with some options and opportunities. As Jeff and Chief Kufeld have said, police services has a number of challenges in the downtown area, and is also constrained by the size of their current facilities, and would be much better served by a facility. And we really think that that is sort of the first domino in this plan. There are other aging facilities that we've noted, and we'll provide input to the master plan and have talked with John about, but really those first two items around Town Hall and the police services center are really important. And also, we recognize that Estes is a unique community. The number of federal lands around limit the potential for development. The natural beauty means that you want to be particularly careful in how you use the resources that you have, the land resources in town. And so we think that means that whatever plan goes forward is going to require some flexibility and community discussion moving forward as the implementation rolls out.
So that brings us to the input session. And again, if you please raise your hand, I will try to moderate this and call on you, and you can ask your questions. And again, you can direct the questions at any one of the team. If you have something specific for me or Chief Kufeld, just let us know and we'll try to do that. So we threw a lot of information at you in a very short amount of time. We met our time goal very well. So what questions do you have?
I see Craig Ellsworth is there, John. I'm going to help John kind of
Thank you.
Notice who has their hands up. Craig, do you want to go ahead and unmute and give us some input?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Craig Ellsworth. I reside in the Estes Valley at 1786 Devil's Gulch Road, and I volunteer with Habitat for Humanity as a board of directors member. As the town of Estes Park explores options to relocate or rebuild Town Hall, I encourage everyone to keep our workforce and affordable housing crisis in mind. In its final report dated June 11th of 2019, the town's workforce, housing, and child care task force found that our lack of workforce and affordable housing is at a crisis level. Multiple employers, including those who employ our teachers, nurses, firefighters, and police officers, indicated that the housing crisis is directly related to increased turnover and difficulty in hiring and retaining employees. Concerns about the housing crisis in Estes Park are widespread. In fact, the task force reported that a full 90% of respondents support town-sponsored solutions for addressing our housing crisis, including code changes, funding, and providing land. The recommendations of the task force included incentivizing downtown housing, noting that downtown is an appropriate location for increased housing density, and utilizing town-owned land for future development of workforce and affordable housing. With our housing crisis and the task force recommendations in mind, I propose that the existing town hall location be redeveloped as workforce and affordable housing. Habitat for Humanity of the St. Vrain Valley would welcome such an opportunity to work with the town of Estes Park in building affordable homes. Together, we can work to build housing for the critical service employees who educate our children, care for our sick and injured, extinguish fires, and protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. I really appreciate that input. That is something that the team has discussed at length. And I'm sure you're aware that we do have a project going right now out of the fish hatchery site that's under consideration for some workforce housing out there. And we've also taken a good look at the downtown plan, which also leads some of the same things you just said, kind of that we need to look at some downtown areas potentially for some workforce housing. So redevelopment of the town hall site certainly could include some of those items. We would definitely keep that on the table. Thank you for those comments.
There's an iPhone, a gentleman with some glasses, and could you, I can't see your name, so feel free to unmute and we'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah, for some reason, Zoom always signs out, so it doesn't show the name. But my name is Sean Alder. I'm currently a downtown resident here in Estes Park. With what really, it's kind of hard to follow up with what Craig said because, it was really more so exactly what I was going to say. As far as the workforce housing issue, I just feel that the town could actually pretty much kill two birds with one stone. As far as relocating the town hall, police station, possibly even relocating the library, and utilizing that structure as the structure shell as a whole. I know that it can get very costly and stuff with renovations, but for if they were town ran workforce housing units, then they'll recoup those costs down the road with, renting out apartment units. And what better location for workforce housing where a lot of our workforce is actually at, which is right down here in the downtown corridor. Just touch base with my history. I'm native to St. Joseph, Missouri. I do know that in Missouri, a lot of the old school buildings were sold by the school district, and that's exactly what they were converted into. Big investors from Kansas City would come up, they would purchase the building, they would utilize state grants for historical landmark, and then the building would be completely renovated into multiple units for apartment housing. So, I mean, that was just, it seems very feasible, especially for the police station to be moved. But also too, with public access for local access to town hall, it does become extremely difficult in the summertime. Me, I'm fortunate I'm able to just walk down there, but it just seems more feasible for the entire facility to completely move out of the downtown corridor. And definitely address with the workforce housing, consider the building. I mean, it's still a structure, it's still there. It can be gutted from the inside, use the outside shell, the roof, everything like that, and then just rebuild on the inside for workforce housing. So.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And John, I didn't know if you wanted to mention, we have talked with, we have included the library in our discussions. It is not part of this master plan, but we know given its proximity to town hall, it's important to consider, what's going on there and that facility as well.
Yeah, Kevin, I thought of that too, as we were listening to those comments. And I just wanted everybody to know that we have been partnering with the library and keeping them informed, definitely a stakeholder in this process. And we will, as we go through this whole process, we'll have considerations for their operations and where they fit best in the community. So, I mean, that'll be ongoing. We'll keep them as partners. We love having them as neighbors, and we have a good relationship. So we'll keep that going. I think Lynn was up next. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Lynn Lawson. I live here in Estes Park, and I am on the Board of Trustees for the library. So I appreciate the comments you just made regarding that. We heard some comments about workforce housing, and that is a potential redevelopment idea. I suspect, though, that the task force has talked in the course of the process. You've had some discussions of what other kinds of redevelopment might be appropriate for that space. And I'm also curious if you can be a little more specific about which space you're talking about when you talk about redevelopment. There's the town hall and the police facility. There's, as you said, the library, which is a separate facility. And there's also all that parking. Can you help me understand a little bit better what you're talking about there and what options you've considered?
Yeah, I think we can do that. And I may lean on Carol and Jeff if they want to jump in and also give some input on that question. We really aren't to that level of designing the redevelopment yet, but we have certainly talked about those. And I think I'll let either Carol or Jeff, whichever one he wants to jump in, talk a little bit about those conversations.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So really, the library is kind of its own standalone entity. There certainly is an option for, the library to stay exactly where they are. And there's also an option for a future civic campus, as I mentioned, in option 2, assuming that that's desired by the library district and the community. But, this plan isn't going to really say too much about that other than the fact that those options exist. And that's part of the flexibility, I think, in moving forward. When we talk about the town hall relocating, we're really talking about the town hall services that are in the town hall building, including police services, which would now have its own standalone facility that serves its needs better. And then whatever parking is associated with those uses would go with those uses. So if the library stays where it is, for example, there would be parking provided for the library. So I think that, really it will come down to land availability, appetite of the community for, creating a future campus or not. And, the kind of input we're getting at this meeting is extremely helpful. This plan isn't going to say, go with option A or go with option C. We're going to lay out the pros and cons of those options and talk about how the city can make decisions in the future as land opportunities may present themselves. So does that answer your question?
I guess at one level, yes. When you talk about redevelopment, it sounds like you're talking about the buildings, the town hall and the police, and some portion of that existing lot.
Correct.
That
Correct.
I, as a resident, use that lot, not just for town services or for the library, but for, I've got a little errand to run.
That's exactly right.
That lot go away.
No, and in fact, some of the things you're bringing up are exactly the questions and the considerations we have in the questionnaire. When do you come downtown? Where do you park? What do you do when you park there? So those are the kinds of things we're trying to understand further. But you're right, there, in addition to the restroom facilities that are downtown, some level of parking is appropriate. It's just we don't know what that answer is yet because there's no plan for what that redevelopment would be. But often when downtowns redevelop a mixed use kind of development, there is public parking provided or some level of public parking provided as part of that. So I would guess that would be something that the community would be interested in.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Diane? Diane Palmer has her hand up. Let's see.
Mute. Okay. It's Tony Palmer, not Diane Palmer. We're on her computer. But I find it hard to even consider any of the options for moving the buildings without really understanding what are the availability of land. Because if you have very limited land, of course, you're going to have to keep part of the campus where it is. If you have a lot of land somewhere, that you can make a big campus, or you can, that's another thing. But without knowing that first, I don't know how we can really say, gee, how much money are we going to spend on this and all that without starting with the land.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. We did a study session with the trustees a few months ago that specifically talked about opportunity sites within the community. And one of the ideas we're going to try to pursue in 2022 is a right of first refusal with some sites that we think would have some opportunity. So they're not for sale right now, but the town may ask some community members that have some property in a good location, that if they do decide to sell, that we'd be interested in talking to them about that. So we floated that idea out there, knowing how difficult it is to find land. And as we talked, through the presentation about flexibility in the plan, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're going to have to be flexible because we don't know what opportunities necessarily we're going to have. There are no large open fields out there to go put town hall. So it's going to have to be a creative solution to help us get in that direction. You're absolutely right. The land's going to have to come first.
And do we have the right of eminent domain to take over some land that might be a good site that isn't for sale?
We haven't really even gone down that path yet. I think we want to explore all the options of doing it in a first right of refusal or for some other method. We haven't really even talked about that. So to be honest.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Claudine.
John, hi, everybody. Claudine from the Public Library. And I'm seeing many of you again because John was kind enough to invite us to an early study session. So thank you for the early participation. My question is about urban renewal, and you may have answered this before, and forgive me if it was covered, but is that forever off the table for a project of this size?
Just to clarify, Claudine, I think that's going to be a Kevin question, but are you talking for a funding stream?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a question about funding. There's been a lot of heave and push in this community with urban renewal. Then we removed it as a community. Then the state changed the rules. And I'm just curious about its possibility as a funding mechanism. Thanks.
There may be some possibility around there. Many of the urban renewal mechanisms that we've seen are where, there's a certain, like a district set up, and then there's like a TIF or a certain portion of the sales tax that kind of flow to that. I think that could be feasible. Like you said, it has a complicated history in Estes and across, many rural communities in Colorado, especially those in, mountain communities where it's been used in just a wide variety of ways. So I think that is a possibility. I think that, having a better, being a little further down the line with, like Tony suggested, what properties are we looking at? How does that first piece of police services fall out? And then I think there could be, like at that point, once that piece starts to move, is probably a good time to start considering, is it urban renewal? Is it some grant funding? Is it a combination? How does this fit in with likely some sort of certificates of participation or bonding or, risk transfer.
It's not
financial
off the table. It's just unlikely. Right.
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you. The question is partly motivated by the idea of completely relocating downtown services. And I mentioned this during my time with John and some of you is I look at Coconut Grove, Florida and Taos, New Mexico, and even Farmington, where they removed what might be considered traditional non-retail services. And the way it changed downtown was significant. And I might argue not for the best for the community. And so I know you're professionals and I know you're going to approach this thoughtfully, but redevelopment of downtown is of great interest to me in this, obviously because of the library as well. So I feel like my cards are on the table. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Claudine. I believe Alita had your hand up.
Yeah, as you're discussing parcels of land for the redevelopment in one way or the other, I had noticed that there's a very large piece of land that is for sale presently on the corner of Elm Road and Moraine. Obviously, there'd have to be some rearrangement of the road, but there's room on either side of the Moraine Road for expansion and turning lanes. But my thought originally had been to put some high density housing in that area or for, a low income type of housing or affordable housing. But it also would be big enough to make the city campus that you're talking about. It's practically a square acre. So that's my input.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And that I believe the piece of property you're talking about also is next to town-owned land, which we have some of our shops up on Elm Road. And as part of the planning process, we're not only looking at town hall and police services, we've been looking at some of the other service providers within the organization, especially the ones that have a lot of employees working out of those shops. Those are in consideration as well of improving those situations. So thank you for those comments. And that's certainly something that we will talk about and consider as we move forward.
Okay.
I don't see any more hands raised. Does anybody have any more questions? Morgan, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide as we wait and see if anybody else. I'll talk a little bit about this. And if you think of that question, feel free to raise your hand again. So where do we go from here? We're going to continue to build this plan and start to put it together. Obviously, from some of the comments we heard tonight, we'll take all those things into consideration, but I think flexibility is going to be key for us going forward, no matter what is recommended and what decisions are made down the road. And I think, like Carol alluded to, I don't think we're going to come out of this plan and say, this is what the town needs to do. I think we're going to have those options because it has to be so dynamic because we don't have the land to do this. That's going to be really the first step, is figuring out where we can put police services, making sure that works for the community, make sure it works for the police department. So we will take all this public input and capture it in the plan. Really important to us, if you could take the time to fill out our questionnaire, which will give you a QR code here in a few seconds. And we're looking to try to start to work through this master plan and present it to the trustees again, and then hopefully adoption early second quarter. But again, really important for us. So you can scan that QR code or make a copy of that link there to go to fill out that questionnaire. It is live. We will also have this link on the town's website on the facilities master plan page. So you can get to it there. And again, we recorded this meeting for those that couldn't attend, and If you want to go back and review anything, it'll also be on that facilities master plan page, so you can go review it. And we'll also have a PDF of all the slides, so you could be able to scroll through those without necessarily listening to all of us talk again. So anybody come up with any other questions? Okay, I think we've covered it. And again, I appreciate all the attendance. I appreciate you coming and listening to what we're doing. And if you think of something later, feel free to get a hold of us. Again, my name is John Lankhammer. I'm the facilities manager with the town of Estes. You can send me an email, give me a call. I'm in the staff directory on our website. I did not put my email on this slide. I just now thought of that, but I should be easy to find. So again, thank you all for attending, and appreciate all the comments and the participation. Have a good evening.